How to make money in real estate. Lecture 11. In this lecture I am explaining the terms leasehold and freehold, the difference between the two and what are the advantages and disadvantages. What is a lease? What is a leasehold? When buying a property there are two main types, freehold and leasehold. You know the difference between renting and owning a home, but there is a third category many are not familiar with, called a leasehold property. Contracts for leaseholds last for a minimum of 40 years and up to 120 or more. That is a long time, and this type of home ownership can be complex. Leaseholds are more common for commercial property where malls and other businesses can Leaseholds are more common for commercial property where malls and other businesses can be built on the land, but they also exist for residential purposes, such as houses and flats. While properties with leaseholds are fairly rare, this type of property can still be found across the United States and United Kingdom. Freehold. Someone who owns the freehold of a property owns the property and the land it stands on, for an unlimited period. Leasehold. Unlike a freeholder, as a leaseholder you own the property but not the land on which it is built, that is owned by the freeholder. Ownership of your property is also for a set period, which can be a number of years, decades or centuries, depending on the length of your lease. If your lease expires, ownership of your property technically passes to the freeholder. In some cases flats or commercial property may be sold as leasehold properties with the freehold held by the builder or a firm he or she has sold the freehold to. Some flats, especially in houses converted into many flats, are sold on the basis that the owner shares the freehold with others in the same building, known as share of freehold. Houses tend to be sold as freehold properties, given there is only one property on that piece of land. Controversially, however, this has not always been the case with new builds homes in recent years. How leasehold property works. The property owner or the freeholder grants the leaseholder the right to live or rent the property for a specified span of time. To hold up his end of the bargain, the lessee will have to make a down payment, typically 20% less than the amount required to buy a freehold home. After that, the leaseholder pays rent, called ground rent, every year, like your typical tenant. Leaseholders can renovate to their heart's content, build additions, or even erect whole new buildings on the land, and rent those units out to tenants of their own choosing. At the end of the lease, however, unless the contract stipulates otherwise or a longer lease is negotiated, the property or land reverts back to the owner, improvements and all. Owning a leasehold gives you the right to live in a property for a set period of time, which can be years, decades or centuries. But it is important to understand that in the eyes of the law, you are essentially a tenant of the freeholder for that period. Also, you do not technically own the property, you own the lease, even though you can obviously buy and sell the physical property. A decent length on the lease, 100 or more years, can add £1,000 or even £10,000 to your property's marketing value. On the other hand, where a lease is under 80 years it is considered dangerous territory, and can make a property difficult to sell or remortgage if you already own it, while for buyers, lenders may be unwilling to give you a mortgage on it. This is why it's sometimes necessary to extend your lease. Unfortunately, extending a lease can be both expensive and complicated, and the price only goes up the fewer years a lease has left on it. The UK government is currently attempting an overhaul of the system to make it both easier and cheaper for homeowners to extend a lease. Information about the length of the lease should be provided by the housing developer or seller. Leaseholder rights and responsibilities. Your lease will tell you what conditions you've agreed to, for example, if you need permission to make alterations, how much you'll have to pay to maintain the property, whether you or your landlord has responsibility for repairs and dealing with noisy neighbors, You have the right to get information about service charges or insurance. The building's insurance will normally be sorted for you by the freeholder, though you'll still have to contribute to the cost, normally in the form of a service charge. Furthermore, you have the right to be consulted about certain maintenance and running cost. Leaseholder rights and responsibilities. Responsibilities. Your lease will tell you what conditions you've agreed to. For example, if you need permission to make alterations, how much you will have to pay to maintain the property, whether you or your landlord has responsibility for repairs and dealing with noisy neighbors. Rights. You have the right to get information about service charges or insurance. Furthermore, you have the right to be consulted about certain maintenance and running costs. Common problems with leasehold. In recent years, the leasehold sector has been beset with issues. Thousands of leasehold homeowners have complained about being missold or misled over the terms of their lease. Extortionate ground rents. One of the main issues is ground rent, where the leaseholder pays a sum, or rent, to the freeholder. Traditionally, this ground rent was a nominal sum, but in more recent years leaseholders have complained about being sold properties where the annual ground rent is in excess of £250. In some cases, the ground rent doubles every few years, meaning leaseholders face paying their freeholder £100 or £1,000 in ground rent each year. Some leaseholders have found that the ground rent is so expensive that it has made remortgaging or selling their property nearly impossible. And because the terms of the ground rent are written into the lease, it can cost £100 in legal fees to have the ground rent amended or removed, something that would need the agreement of the freeholder. Expensive service charges. Another growing issue for leaseholders, especially those who live in new build estates, is escalating service or management fees. These charges can be monthly or annual, and are normally paid to the freeholder or a service management company, who look after the common areas of your building or the estate on which you live. Like ground rent, these charges are normally written into the terms of your lease, and if there is no cap on what can be charged, what you might pay can easily increase. If you pay a service charge, it is important to remember that your lease should set out the way the service or maintenance charge is organized and what can be charged. Also, you have the right to ask for a summary showing how the charge is worked out and what it's spent on, and see any paperwork supporting the summary, such as receipts. Service charges must be reasonable and fair, which means leaseholders can dispute any charges they think are unfair at a tribunal. Some homeowners said that they were not given this information by developers before buying their property. Others said that they were not even made aware that their property was a leasehold before buying it. Thank you for watching the video. If you watch all my lectures, you may be able to start investing in rental properties a little quicker. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell to get alerts when a new video is posted. Please write your comments, questions, or concerns you would like to share.